Hello there, and welcome to Deep Thoughts from the Cloffice. I am your host, Thomas Nettesheim, and I'm excited for you to be here. I don't know if you'll be excited to be here after we're done talking today, but maybe you are intrigued by the title. Maybe you're intrigued by Deep Thoughts from the Cloffice. Maybe you've known me long enough to know that I work from a Cloffice and that I have random deep thoughts, and you want to see where this is going to go. Well, this is an entrance into my brain, so it could be a good thing. It could be something that you've thought of before as well. It could not be, and maybe I'll get you thinking something a little bit differently. So we'll see where this goes. This might be episode 1 of 1, but I think it's actually worth discussing what we're going to discuss today. Let me give you a little bit of context. So, Cloffice is my office in the closet. On the other side of the door is our bedroom. It is actually fairly late, so my family is sleeping, but this is the best time that I could fit in doing this. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and this is also where I work. This is also where I do my day job and my meetings for the nonprofit, which I'll share about in just a little bit. And the deep thoughts are just the randomosity that sometimes comes into my head. Now, this might not be very deep questions like, why is abbreviation such a long word? Or why are they called Charlie horses? Or why couldn't the first peeping Tom be named Jeff? If anybody's listening named Jeff, I'm sorry. And why is it pronounced ocean? If it's ocean, wouldn't that be like Oshin or Oseen or Okeen? It just doesn't make sense. The English language is a very confusing thing. So those are some of the deep thoughts that happen in my brain. But don't worry, that is not what this podcast is. Don't shut it off just yet. If you saw the title is Things That I've Learned About Trauma from My Dog. Now, I've actually learned quite a bit about trauma thanks to the nonprofit that I'm part of called Restoring Oaks, which is a faith based organization that is educating, advocating, and fighting human trafficking in the Charlotte County area. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a little bit. But I want to share a little bit about what I have learned about trauma through an experience that my dog had while we went on a walk. So without further ado, this is Deep Thoughts from the Cloffice. Let's get thinking. Okay, so I think that dogs are absolutely one of the best creatures ever created. I mean, there's a reason that dogs spelled backward is God, because they're the most loyal things that you could ever have. They have unconditional love. They will love anybody. They will be your best friend no matter who you are. Dogs are absolutely incredible. And I think that we could actually learn a lot about loyalty and unconditional love and all of these things from a dog. There's some other habits that we probably shouldn't learn, like yelling and screaming and yapping and barking whenever we want food. I mean, those are things that probably shouldn't be done. But there's some things that we could certainly learn from the characteristics and the traits of a dog. I didn't necessarily think that I would learn a little bit about trauma from my dog, but I'll tell you the story here and you'll see kind of where I'm getting that. So, this was several months ago now. We're going on a walk as a family and we get to the street down the road here, and all of a sudden we start hearing this barking. You're probably seeing where this is going to go. So you hear this barking. I'm up here with my dog. This is a smaller dog, about 20-pound dog. And this dog, probably about 40 or 50 pounds, comes charging after my dog, gets out of the handle of its owner, and is going to attack my dog. And so we're all trying to get this dog up, and I'm trying to push him out of the way. Thank God, the only thing that happened was he got a little bit of my little dog's leg, and I was able to finally pick him up, and we were able to get everything taken care of before there was any serious damage. So that happened. We get home, we check on our dog, and he's fine. It minus a little bit of a cut on his leg, but don't even need to go to the vet. Everything is fine. So we go to the next day, and we go to a couple weeks, and we're going on walks. And when we go on walks, if you know anything about trauma, you're going to probably see some of these things that are going to happen. Let me ask you, what do you think happens when my dog hears a bark? Even if the dog is properly subdued, even if the dog is behind a fence, what do you think happens to that dog? Well, I'll tell you what was happening. He was trying to jump right back into my lap. He was trying to jump back up into my arms, or at the very least, he was looking up at me and walking as fast as his leash would let him, or even going to the other side of me, to the other end of where the bark was coming from. And it didn't matter if it was a small dog bark, a big dog bark, any type of barking would set the dog off. And let me remind you, this dog is the sweetest dog you will ever meet in your entire life. Would go up to pretty much anybody or anything, think everybody is your best friend. And he was a ham like that. He just loved being around people, would jump on anybody, would go and say hi to any dog. And it's really funny how they meet, because he just kind of goes and lays down right next to him and kind of kicks at him, and it's a cute thing. He doesn't really do that as much anymore. And he used to be very jumpy about walks. He's even less leery. He still gets excited, but he's leery about walks. Now, I want to give you a little bit more context. We don't go that direction anymore. We don't head that way. We have other roads that we can go, and we head to those other roads and those other directions for our walks. But any dog bark sets him off just like that after one incident of this dog attack. Now, think about this with trauma. Now, when it comes to trauma and when it comes to things like PTSD, I went to school for psychology for an emphasis in Christian counseling. I'm learning a lot about it through some of the conversations that I've had through our nonprofit and things like that. And I'm even seeing where I experienced different traumas in my life. And I think that too many times we don't identify trauma for what it is, because it's not as intense as we see other instances of trauma, or we compare the trauma that we experience to somebody else, and we say, well, I didn't go through that, so therefore I was not traumatized, or the person was familiar, or the person is a member of my family, or the person is somebody that had this position of authority, or I put myself into this position and therefore it's my fault. We need to start thinking differently about this, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but there were times growing up where I would look at trauma, or I would look at somebody who's experiencing trauma, and I would say things like, why can't they just move on? How did that particular sound, or that particular smell, or that particular word trigger that experience, rekindle some of that hurt and some of that pain? How did that environment cause such harm and continue to cause such harm in that person's life? And I would even say things that are dismissive to other people's pain growing up, because I didn't understand. The experience that I had with my dog that day, and pretty much every walk since, has helped me understand a little bit more about trauma, especially if it's an immediate, a one-time thing. Obviously, if it's a long-term thing, that could even be more damaging, but it only takes one incident, one traumatic incident, to affect a person, or in this case, a dog's life, possibly forever. When something happens in your life that causes you to be different than you were before, that is nearly impossible unless there are proper measures taken to recover from. There are measures that can be taken, and I will tell you that I think the best way to find healing, I am in the Christian camp. I am a believer in Jesus Christ, and I firmly believe that the best thing that you can do to have healing from your trauma is to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, because he is the ultimate healer, and he will bring that healing into your life if you let him, through his word, through his spirit, and through the people that you put in your life and he puts in your life. I do firmly believe that that is the best way to find healing. But I will say this. I feel like there's two camps that this can happen in. There's the Jesus camp. I'm going to just call it that. This isn't a blanket statement, but it seems like there are times where those that are Christians or those that are in the Jesus camp think, "Oh, well, you can't go get counseling. You can't take medication. You can't go do this because you're not having enough faith. You're not putting enough faith in Christ." And I don't think that's where we need to be. I think that Jesus and God gave us brains, gave us minds to think and to discover and to help. And so we have to be willing to use the resources that have been given to us by God through our minds, through medicine, through all of these resources. Now, can they be abused? Of course. Can can they be crutches and we don't get to that ultimate healing because we are pigeonholing or being diagnosed a certain way or only treating symptoms instead of getting to the root cause of things? Of course. But we need to make sure that, especially those of us who are Christians who are going through troubles and struggles because of the fallen world that we live in, we've got to make sure that we are encouraging resources and proper resources to provide that healing on earth. And then, of course, the other side of the camp is, I would say, the science mind. And again, not a blanket statement, but those who firmly believe in things like medication and psychiatry and all of that kind of stuff, but think that if somebody starts dabbling into Jesus and into the spiritual realm, is not trusting the science and is, you know, giving up and following the crutch of religion and thinking that they're just treating the symptoms that way as well, or making themselves feel better. And again, we have to be willing to tackle it on both sides. We have to trust the creator of everything and allow him and allow the resources around us to help us with our healing. Now, those resources can be medicine, they can be counseling, they can be our peers, they can be the word of God, they can be prayer. And I think all of it needs to be part of the healing story. And I want to highlight something else here. Like I said before, we don't go the route that we normally went before with our dog because we know that would probably not be a good situation. Can you imagine if we were to just say, "Oh, he's fine. Let's just go and put him right in the fence where this other dog was and just he'll get over it." No, we don't do that, right? We went a different direction. Sometimes when we experience trauma, sometimes when something happens in our life, whether that be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sometimes the best thing that we could possibly do is find a different direction. Find a different route, find a different place to be, different group of people to be around, a different living situation, whatever it is. Sometimes you have to start somewhere else and you have to take that risk of uncertainty and say, this uncertainty is better than the abuse that I'm experiencing right now. And sometimes that is a decision that needs to be made. So I mentioned earlier about a nonprofit that I'm part of. It's an organization called Restoring Oaks. We are a faith-based community alliance to prevent and end human trafficking, and we do it through education, advocacy, and survivor care. As you can imagine, human trafficking, sex trafficking victims and survivors, they go through extreme trauma, whether that be once, whether that be several times a night, whether that be for days, whether that be for years. It is a serious thing, and it can make them question themselves, their own value, their faith, and it's a terrible thing. And I know that trauma shows many faces, has many different things that happens. But one thing that we're doing as an organization is we're starting a support group. And the book that we're going through is Healing What's Hidden by Evan and Jenny Owens. And I have not finished this book yet. I'm not a book reader. I'm a book listener. Maybe one of you is a book listener, and that's why you opened up this podcast. But what I have found in that book is absolutely incredible. And it's all about overcoming trauma through practical steps and practical application. If you have gone through any sort of abuse or trauma, even if you're not sure that what you went through is trauma, but you know something just isn't right with how that relationship panned out or that situation panned out, ask questions, seek help. You can look at the book, you can read through it, you can listen to it. It's a great opportunity for you. Talk to somebody that you trust, somebody that can help you. We've got to have these conversations, and we have to be willing to open up about the hurt in our lives. It has to be somebody you trust. If you are a believer, start in prayer. Start with God and say, God, I need you to help me through the situation that I'm in. Even if it happened years ago, you could still be holding and harboring guilt and shame and regret and doubt, feel like you deserved whatever happened to you. That's not true. You may have made a mistake, or something may have happened to you that you had no control over. Either way, there is healing, there is redemption, there is restoration, and you can be healed. You can move forward. We're not gonna get over the trauma. Trauma cannot just be gotten over. It is part of our lives now. If we experience trauma, which I firmly believe that everybody experiences some sort of trauma in their life. Again, it's part of a fallen world that we live in. But we can have those scars and be able to move forward and be able to make an impact in our communities and be able to hopefully stop others from experiencing the same things if we are willing to be open and honest and talk about it and potentially make changes if we need to. So that is a little bit about what I learned about trauma with my dog. Again, I've had other things that I've been able to work through, but that was a physical traumatic event that happened near somebody close to me that has been able to help me learn a little bit more. So again, if you have experienced trauma, if you need help, please make sure that you talk to somebody so that you can start that healing and that restoration journey. So that's Deep Thoughts from the Cloffice, episode 1. We're going to talk about various things. We're not just going to talk about necessarily deep stuff. We're gonna have some fun. We're going to talk movies. We're going to talk about words. One of the other segments, I guess you could call it, that I want to do are demystifying church words that I've heard all my life that I'm trying to unpack again through a new lens, a new frame of being a father, being a husband, and being a believer in Christ. And we're going to go through some other things too, I'm sure. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully this was an encouragement to you. Hopefully it's a first step in you having the courage to step up and to start that conversation in your life, or to, if you have gone through a healing experience, be able to help somebody else who has gone through some sort of traumatic event in their life. So until next time, keep learning, keep listening, keep leading, but most of all, keep loving. God bless you, and we'll talk soon.